We welcome Brock University Assistant Professor of Political Science Joanne Heritz to The Source. Joanne has been studying municipal-indigenous relations in Niagara, Hamilton, and Brantford. Joanne, your findings show that here in the Niagara region, at least, we can do a lot more to improve, recognize, and involve our Indigenous residents.
Yes, that's right. When we look at, when we compare to Hamilton as an example, the initiatives that they've taken to improve relations, I think that there's some best practices that are happening in Hamilton that could be copied in Niagara.
Joanne, Hamilton has the Aboriginal Advisory Committee. We don't have anything like that here in the Niagara region.
That's right. We don't have anything yet, but this is actually in Hamilton. They've had advisory council for about the last almost 20 years, and it sort of follows a pattern of larger municipalities with somewhat smaller Indigenous proportion populations do have these advisory councils that give municipalities a way of communicating with the Indigenous community.
Why has the province not mandated something like this? I mean, we've had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We know all about that, and the province is really sort of lagging behind pushing the municipalities to do something.
Yes, but they're really not constitutionally mandated to do so, and that can get into quite a long conversation. However, it really is the Daniels decision, a recent Supreme Court decision, really placed the responsibility for Indigenous peoples with the federal government. So the federal government does, does have responsibilities for First Nations and reserves, but over time it's proven that also it has a responsibility for all Indigenous peoples. So whether or not they're on reserve or off reserve, and let's say in urban centers.
Your study looked at 3 different facets of this relationship. Can you explain what those were?
I looked at the citizen participation and engagement, and then I looked at Indigenous governance and actually Aboriginal culture as municipal assets. So I used those terms to evaluate how municipalities were really measuring up in their relations with Indigenous peoples.
We have seen new monuments, new locations come up where we are recognizing Indigenous culture and history here in Niagara, but that doesn't necessarily cement the Indigenous municipal relationship, does it?
You know, in Queenston, we can see a recognition for Indigenous peoples at Queenston Heights, I should say. But what I'm really looking at is how are municipalities really working on building relations with Indigenous peoples. As an example, St. Catharines has a memorandum of understanding with the Niagara Regional Native Center. Those are sort of steps in the right direction, but it's also the idea that municipalities, even one of the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action mentions cultural competency, that municipal and also federal, all actually public service employees should be taught Indigenous culture as a way of understanding their relations with Indigenous peoples in their communities.
Have you presented your findings to the region? Is there going to be some movement on some of this on the local level?
No, not yet, but it would be nice to see.